So I want to say a good afternoon or good morning if you're watching elsewhere in the country than the East Coast. I'm Danny Rubin, and I'm the founder of our company, which is called Rubin. And we provide an online curriculum for business communication skills, email skills and phone skills, and how to conduct yourself professionally as you pursue opportunities. And I want to welcome everybody to our next installment of our virtual internship series. Today, we're exploring the world of video game development. Show of hands, who's excited to be here today to learn about video game development? Our guests are excited, students are excited. So glad to have so many of you here all over the country. We're going to dive into learning about our guests, Paul and Ryan, in just a few minutes. If you two want, you can click off your camera, and we're going to do a little bit of administrative stuff. We'll bring you back in just a second. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and I want to pull up a PowerPoint, get my chat going again. Let me pull that. Can everybody see my screen okay? We have like a PowerPoint slide up. Okay. Soren says yes. Shane says yes. Great. So this is for the teachers. Okay, teachers, follow closely. We've put together a collection of worksheets and presentations for communication skills. Teachers, raise your hand. How many students write emails to you like text messages? We see a lot of hands going up, right? So we go right after those challenges, help students to improve how they communicate. So we put together a Google folder of worksheets and presentations for identifying the parts of an email, capitalizing I. How many teachers, how many students send messages with lowercase I? A lot of hands going up. Email closing lines, professional text messaging, how to sign your name in cursive. Teachers, how many students teachers think it's important students know how to sign their name in cursive before they leave school? So we put together some simple worksheets for all these topics and presentations, all free in a Google folder. In addition, we put together an online presentation checklist. So if students have some online presentations coming up in the next few months, or even in the summer or fall, this is a one sheet with some simple techniques to look your best, sound your best, have a plan for that conversation. How many students, show of hands, have a virtual presentation coming up between now and the end of the school year? So I know we all have end of year presentations and projects. So for the teachers, okay, the educators here, if you would like these resources, all you need to do is type the word interested in the chat with your email address. Okay, email address and interested. What we like to do, since we can't meet you all right now and have a conversation, is have a brief phone call in the coming couple of days to say hello, learn about your program, and pass along these resources. Okay, so all you have to do is just interested and your email address, and we will get it to you as quickly as possible so you can bring these topics into your classroom and help students learn how to communicate at their best for jobs in video games or wherever else they might be going next with their, careers, with post-college, post-high school, whatever's next. So it's coming to you. Thank you for putting your information in. You can keep it coming, and we'll remind you again at the end, okay? Again, this is an offer for the teachers to then bring it down to the students. And I do want to make a special mention that if you are watching this, none of you are watching this on a recording right now, we're live. But if you happen to be watching it later on a recording and you'd like these resources, just remember this slide, pause it here, type support@rubineducation.com, and you can email us with the subject line Rubin Worksheets, and we'll get it to you that way. If you watch this later on and you weren't here to ask for it live, okay? Separately, I always want to mention we have another webinar coming your way in 2 weeks. Okay, on the 22nd of April, we're talking to a lieutenant in a police department about the world of law enforcement. Show of hands of teachers or students who is interested in learning about law enforcement as another career option. Lieutenant Scott Myers will be our guest. He's in Coral Gables, Florida, which is near the University of Miami. 23 years on the force, he's seen it all. He's going to talk to us about working in that field. So please mark your calendars for the 22nd. And lastly, everyone here today, and even if you watch it as a recording, we'll make it available too, you're going to receive a certificate for being here. Teachers and students, certificate of completion. So that'll come to you tomorrow morning. Okay, for those who are here live, it'll come to you tomorrow morning, and look for it in your email. Okay, so those are the little housekeeping notes I wanted to mention. Now, one more thing before we bring in our guests, I want to share my screen, and I want to pull up one other thing. For the instructors to better understand as a company who we are, again, we're called Rubin, And in addition to our webinar series, we put out an online curriculum called Emerge that provides a library of communication skill exercises to help students for college and career. We cover email etiquette, life skills, phone and video etiquette. Teachers, show of hands, how many teachers think students should be confident speaking into the phone for opportunities, not just texting? So we get deep into phone etiquette. We cover employability skills, networking, resumes, cover letters, internship and job outreach, emails, LinkedIn profiles, job interview prep. Do we have any marketing, business, entrepreneurship teachers here today? Let us know in the chat. We cover a wide array of communication skills for entrepreneurship, sales writing, website writing, PR, fundraising. And finally, we cover communication skills for leadership development, managerial communication, client communication, project management, public speaking, report writing, and student leaders. Do we have any teachers here who are also advisors to a CTSO perhaps, like FBLA, DECA, or Student Council, or Skills USA? Who do we have today? Do we have some advisors? We have FBLA. So a lot of material you can use in the classroom and for competition, and it all integrates to whatever LMS you're on, Canvas, Schoology, Blackboard, Moodle, Google Classroom, whatever you've got, we integrate to your world. So that's who we are. And what I'd like to do now is bring back our guests. Hopefully they didn't run away. And I'd like to introduce our special guests. We're so thankful that they made time today. I want to first introduce Paul Silverman from Bethesda Games, and then we'll get to Ryan Woodland. Paul, tell us briefly your background and the role you play today at Bethesda.
Yeah, awesome. Nice to meet everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And Danny, thanks for inviting us on.
Absolutely.
Paul Silverman, I'm the research director here at Bethesda. So what that basically means is I'm in charge of helping us keep up with consumer trends, what gamers are liking in the games that they're playing, what gamers like about our games, what types of games they might want in the future, and then working with people like Ryan and all the other folks at our company to relay that information, let them know what types of experiences and games gamers are enjoying, and so that they can make games that people want to play and keep up with the changing times. So
wonderful.
My background, I come from a research agency. So a long time ago, I actually worked with Danny at a research agency years and years ago. And many of my clients when I was working at that research agency were in video games and in tech. So that's kind of how I developed my expertise in the industry.
Wonderful. And, maybe you'll see some thoughts and observations in the chat today that might inform some of the things that the company does next. It's a two-way street. So it'll be interesting to see what everybody has to say. So thank you for introducing yourself. Let's go over to Ryan Woodland. Ryan, say hello and tell the students and teachers your background.
Yeah, hey guys, thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it. So I'm Ryan Woodland. I'm the studio director of technology for ZeniMax Online, part of Bethesda. I've been making video games for almost 30 years at this point, actually. Started when I was 15 years old in San Diego making Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis stuff, and kind of never looked back from there. So I've worked at EA, I've worked at Nintendo, I've worked at Sony, now with Bethesda. But basically I manage all the behind the scenes technology that makes games what they are.
Awesome. And I always want to help make sure students understand the power of listening. So how many years did Ryan say he's been in the industry? Who heard the number? Not to age you, but I want them to
understand. No, I feel 30. Old.
And someone said 70 years. That's cool. I don't think it was 70. And also, students, tell me, what are some of the companies that he's worked at before ZeniMax and Bethesda? Did you hear some other companies? EA, Sony, Nintendo? So we want to listen for these words. It's important that we hear people, right? And we remember the details of people's lives and share our own details when it's our turn. So the first thing, you've already posted a lot of questions in the chat. We're going to get to as many as we can. The first thing we're going to do, who has been to our webinars before? Show of hands. What do I always do? Our first question to our guests, what do I always show that I've done at the start of our conversation? Who knows? There it is. Brooke Bell says it. Research. We always show we've done our research. And someone tell me in the chat, why is it important that we do research on somebody before we meet them? Like we're going for a job interview. Why should we do our research on them? what would that show about us? And while you answer that question, I'm going to share my screen and show you the research that I did in advance of today. Get my chat going again. It always goes and hides on me. Okay. And for those who need our sign language services, we'll turn the screen share off in just a moment. If you can't see her, we'll bring it back. Okay. All right. So the first thing that I did is I went to Google News and I just typed in Bethesda games. That's all I did. Okay. And I saw, oh, look at this. Microsoft completes Bethesda acquisition. Interesting. Whoa, what's going on there? Then I go to the Bethesda homepage. Okay. And I see Bethesda and Xbox just getting started. So I'm like, hold on a second. What is happening here? So let me go back to our guests and ask the question. It looks like Microsoft just acquired Bethesda. Tell me about that and tell me how that impacts how your games now fit into the Xbox universe. Let me go to Ryan for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually been really good. Microsoft has been a great partner through this, and really what they want us to do is just keep making great games. So the impact of the acquisition actually hasn't been much. We still get to sit around and just do what we do, make fun. So they've been very supportive in that.
Wonderful, wonderful. So again, let me ask the students, what I just did. I did a Google News search. I went to their website. Raise your hand, students. How many of you could do what I just did? Could look up a company before you talk to somebody for an opportunity? How many could do that? A lot of hands going up. Was that complicated? Can someone tell me in the chat, was that hard to do? No, no, it's not hard to do. It's just thinking differently about opportunities. Because let me ask Paul this question. Paul, if I came to you for an opportunity, a summer internship, a job, and I had already been researching Bethesda, learning about the company, following it in the news, what would that say to you before we even started talking about my potential job? What would it say to you about me as a potential hire?
Well, what it would say is that you're taking initiative to learn on your own and to make sure that you understand what you're getting yourself into, to make sure that you understand who I am and where I come from so that we can connect. And as a potential new colleague or employee, that would be a good sign that you would do that for my company or for me as a teammate. So that's the type of person I'd want to work with.
And I'm sure it's a pretty competitive to land a job at a place like Bethesda. So if you want to be a cut above the rest, you have to do a little bit extra. So I hope the students take that exercise seriously and understand what we're doing here. This is real life. This is how you make things happen. So while I scan through the lengthy list of questions, I'm going to pose a question to Ryan he can work on for a minute. Okay, so my biggest question with video games, we see the games, people playing, see the commercials, they look amazing. I'd like to know if you can give us kind of a start to finish in a minute or so, hard to do. How does a game, sort of the idea for the game, how does it get made? Like, right. What is sort of the process to then get it ready for the store shelves and for online purchase? Like, take us inside the process here.
Sure. Yeah, it's gotten crazy actually now. I mean, video games are so big. When I started, we were making, a game in 3 months with 4 people. Now we're making a game in 5 years with 500 people. So
wow.
Yeah, it's gotten pretty nuts. But I think the best point to make is that making games is not like playing games. And sometimes I think people think that you just play a game and it becomes another game, and that's how they're made. There's a lot of business behind this, but yeah, I mean, usually we're working on some new stuff now, and that oftentimes comes from what Paul does from research. What do people want to play? What are people having fun with? What's what's the content that they want? And luckily, we have a whole slew of very talented people who then take it into concept mode. We have artists, we have writers, we have designers, we have musicians, we have kind of the whole gamut of creativity. So we all work together to figure out what the fun is in a game, and then we set about the process of building that, which is where the
well, and that actually that goes into our next question. I have a question here from Seth Barrett from River Valley. Thank you for the question. He said, "What is the hardest part of game design?" Go ahead, Ryan.
So, I mean, that's I could probably spend hours.
We're getting right down to the nitty gritty here. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I mean, the hardest part of game design is finding what we call a game mechanic, which is what you do in the game. So you have to find a very specific game mechanic, and you have to make that fun. You have to make it feel good. You have to make it look good, and that can oftentimes take months or even years to get down. Even, figuring out the way you run around a landscape, or you fly a plane, or drive a car, whatever it is. It's way harder than it sounds. Figuring out how to make that actually fun for the player is definitely the hardest thing.
It looks so seamless to us, but there's so much going on behind it. So that makes sense. A question for Paul, and it sort of speaks to your background, sort of another phase of the business more on the research side. Isabel Woods Sweeney, West Bend High School. She wants to know about the creative process, sort of conceptualizing a game. Like, how do you take sort of what users want out there, sort of bring all the data together, all the research, and come up with some kind of like idea that can be pursued? Tell us your world, how you listen to the customer and then try to deliver it back.
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of it is just going out and literally talking to people who play games. So we're regularly running focus groups. We're regularly surveying people, asking them what they play, why they play it, what types of things they'd like to see in those games, even if it's not our games that we're talking to them about. Just trying to understand what the hooks are, what the moments that they enjoy the most in those games are. And then bringing that back to the creative folks that Ryan was talking about, and saying, hey, there's certain types of people out there that really, really enjoyed this experience that they got in a certain game. Is there something that we can do to kind of bolster that experience, or to take that to the next level in a creative way, in our own way? And so it's really that process of talking to the consumers, talking to the players, talking to the gamers, saying, what is it that you like? What makes you like it so much? What are those moments that really made you kind of light up and really enjoy something? And understand what it was that made that happen for them, and then working with the creative folks. And that's what the creative folks are great at, is then taking that nugget of it, joy that we were able to identify, and then expanding on it for some sort of new experience.
I like that, finding like nuggets of joy, like when there's that moment of joy, like that's what you want to focus on, and that's what you want to create more of, right?
Exactly.
I think that's great. And tell us, Paul, we talked about this beforehand, that there's lots of different jobs you can pursue in video game development. It's not just, being in the trenches, designing the game. There's a lot of other roles. Can you speak to that for just a moment?
Yeah, for sure. So my role is somewhat like that. We have people from all sorts of different disciplines and all sorts of different types of backgrounds. So I work very closely with the marketing teams and with the planning teams and with the sales teams, kind of on like what you would call the business side of things. And so we have accountants, we have marketers, we have an entire slew of community managers who are really, really great at going out on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and engaging with people and making things really, really fun. And then we have artists who are creating trailers and videos. And we have all sorts of engineers in the background that Ryan probably works pretty closely with, that are, we have an IT department that's got to make sure that we have all of our computers and all of our software that we need just to work on a daily basis and keep us online. So there's a whole variety of jobs that are supporting people like Ryan while they're making their games, and making sure that that's done at the best way possible.
Thank you very much. We have a question here from Devin Talbot, Idaho State University. He said he's a student interested in creating games, hasn't really gotten started yet, wants to gain those skills. So Ryan, what would you suggest to Devin and anybody else who is in school and wants to start learning how to create games, just initial skill set? What would you suggest they do? What tools should they use? How should they get that practice time?
So I think there are a lot of resources out there now to do this. So the best thing you can do is download Unity, which is a game engine that you can get. It's free to download. You have to pay if you make a real game with it, but you can mess with it and you can jump right in and start coding or start adding artwork into a world, kind of whatever you want to do. It gives it to you. So download Unity or Unreal. And start tinkering.
And that's okay. So students, what were the two programs he just said? And Jacob says Unreal better than Unity. So there's already opinions out there on these tools, but I want to make sure you're listening. These are important skills. And if you have our worksheet or just want to write down in your own notes, These are practical skills and advice that our guests are sharing with you. He said, go get on Unity. That should be your next move. You know, he's a veteran in the industry telling you this is the way to do it, to get your skills ready. So make sure you're listening closely. Question from Noah Allman. Do I have to learn coding to be a game designer? Go to Ryan for that.
Yeah, no, you definitely don't. I mean, there are hardcore coders that we need in games, but to be a designer, it helps to understand the process of the technology behind gaming. But yeah, if you're not a C++ guru, you can still very much design games.
Okay, great. Let's see here. Question over to Paul. So, you know, I think it's important that students understand you didn't start your career in video game development. You were doing various other projects. You didn't even maybe think that would be where you'd end up, right? I mean, it sort of takes a funny path. So talk to them about how, however you get started, you know, you can find your way where you want to go if you keep working on your skills. Talk about that from your experience.
Yeah. So I initially just wanted to get a job doing something interesting. It's that simple. And I basically just worked hard. And when somebody gave me an opportunity, I took it. And I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity working on video games at a company where I was just hired kind of to do whatever, be a smart person, I guess, and help out on projects. And because I had a background in video games, because I could speak intelligently to the gaming industry, you know, I wasn't just somebody who sat and clicked around and played the games. I was inquisitive enough to go out and kind of research and understand the different types of games that were out there, the different types of companies that made certain types of games. So when the opportunity arose, I was able to speak intelligently to what went into making games. And so I was able to basically like get over that little hump and take advantage of the opportunity. So it was really just, you know, I had an interest in gaming and I made sure to understand more than just the game itself, but the business that made the games,
Sure.
which is kind of what people are doing right now, tuning in.
Absolutely. And Paul, along the way, you have a master's degree, you've done tell me some of the other skills and areas of interest that you picked up along the way that actually help you in your job now in research for gaming.
Yeah, so in college I studied economics, finance, and sociology, and so you can imagine sociology for what I do is very important. Understanding people, understanding different types of cultures, just different types of influences that change the way people behave and what they're interested in themselves. Obviously, economics is going to be a useful thing to study, but pairing all of the economics and the sociology with some sort of practical skills like math, statistics, being able to like look at a data readout and pull information from that and convert that into some sort of information and knowledge that I can pass to someone like Ryan. So when I get research and data from some sort of location and being able to convert that into knowledge,
Nice.
That honestly, like that skill is what's allowed me to do well in this job.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, let's get into a couple of like kind of in the trenches gaming questions for Ryan. Okay, we have a question from Rafael Baltazar, Arroyo High School. How do game developers optimize their games to run smoothly? Are there hacks that allow for better performance while providing a similar experience?
Oof, that's a real tough one. I mean, we're constantly optimizing, and in fact, Paul and I were just having a conversation about this with Elder Scrolls Online, one of our products that we're currently optimizing. But I mean, optimization could happen on a bunch of different levels. It could happen at the network level. It could happen at the code level. It could happen at the data level. So it's a constant challenge. You know, with live games now, we're constantly making them bigger. We're adding stuff to them all the time, and the more stuff you stick in the bag, the more computational horsepower you have to use. So yeah, the how we do it is a very long story, but it's the struggle is real. It's a constant challenge. We're constantly optimizing.
Okay, thank you. And I know I didn't mention yet, but I'll try to share the link. that Ryan hosts a great podcast taking you inside the video game industry called D3, correct? Called D3.
Yeah, the D3 podcast.
And a recent podcast I listened to, we'll try to keep this, PG as we said, but Rich Matthias, or maybe one of his students, asked about crunches in the workplace. Can you give us the, vanilla definition of what a crunch is in video game development?
So, I mean, the problem with video games is they're never done, right? You never finish them. You can always make them better. So it used to happen a lot more, but there were times when you would just work constantly. You would work around the clock. So I used to do about 7 days in a row in the office. I would sleep under my desk, work about 20 hours a day, just to make the game better, make it more fun, make it more polished. Luckily, we've gotten away from that. The industry is way better at kind of finding a work-life balance on this stuff now. But that's kind of one of the challenges of a game. I've never finished one. I've just shipped them all, right? You can always do more.
Does it sort of torture you? Like it's just it's never done. It's never.
Oh, it does. It does, and the fans torture us too. It's very difficult working years on a product and then reading the feedback from people, because people can be pretty honest. Yes. It's a great challenge, and it's frustrating, and it's awesome and inspiring, and all of the above.
This is a question, Adam, maybe Paul has a thought on it first. I'm not sure. Jaden Campbell, Miami Valley CTC, are lore, LORE, are lore-based games with sequels usually made with the sequel in mind?
Or lore-based game? Well, I would say yes and no. I think when a lore-based game comes out, there's always the opportunity or the idea that there could be a sequel if enough people like it. And that's kind of where my job will come in, is I'll go and talk to people who played the first lore-based game, see if they liked it enough, see what type of things they enjoyed about the game, the lore, and if it makes sense to expand on that, or maybe drop the idea and move and do something else. So I think generally it's going to be something we make with the idea of a sequel in mind, and then see if that's what people want once they get the chance to try the first one.
Okay. Another really in the weeds question, but I want to get some of these. I know we have some hardcore gamers here. Okay. I'll ask this to Ryan. Maybe you know the answer. Antonio Arvello, Patriot High School, which is in Northern Virginia. What inspired Bethesda to make the Elder Scrolls? And did Richard Garriott Ultima series inspire some aspects of Elder Scrolls?
So I don't know that I can answer that confidently, because I'm not.
I don't even know what it means, but go ahead.
I'm not on the creative side of things, and I wasn't at Bethesda for the inception of Elder Scrolls. But people are hugely inspired about that world and that the lore behind that. And I do know, plug the podcast, we do actually have Richard Garriott stories on the podcast, because he's kind of a famous game maker and one of the most fascinating individuals I have ever had the pleasure of meeting. So
why is that?
So I mean, he created Ultima. He's just this. I use this word as a compliment. He's this crazy nerd who is so passionate about creating immersive worlds, and you could just sit and listen to him talk about all of his ideas for hours and hours, and it's so inspiring just to hear how he thinks, and just to hear the ideas that he has.
That's great. Thank you for that. I want to say we have 121 questions right now in this Q&A. They're all so good, and I can tell there's a lot of passion among the students and teachers here who love these games. Question from Forrest Webb. How do you go about making art assets and 3D models? And what would you give, what advice would you give to someone who wanted to also learn to make models and assets? I'll ask that to Ryan.
Yeah, so it's kind of the same thing. You can download a lot of packages for free to do this. So Max, Maya, and Houdini are the big ones at this point.
Another knowledge drop there. What was it? Say them again.
So Max, Maya, and Houdini
Maya
are
and
the
Houdini.
biggest. Photoshop is also something we use quite a bit, but you can get them for free, and you could jump in, just go on YouTube, look for some tutorials, and you could actually start making stuff.
How many students think they could take themselves on YouTube and teach themselves some skills just by learning? Show of hands. How many could do that? because it's right there. You just got to know what you're looking for. He's giving us some really good direction here on some tools to start playing with. Question for Paul, maybe Ryan can second this. What is a good way to get your foot in the door in the video game industry? A question from Shay Roundsville. Go ahead, Paul.
I would say, and I guess Ryan could speak to it as well, but we have a lot of folks who come without many skills and work in our QA department. And
so what does QA stand for?
Quality assurance.
Quality assurance.
So they're basically playing the games that are in production. They're trying to see if they can find bugs. They're trying to see if things are working the way that they're planned to work. And you can get into that with relatively minimal experience and minimal knowledge. And in the process, you learn the production process of a game because you're part of it. And so you get to see the game from, an earlier stage to a later stage and how it develops. And you get to work closely with the development team in some instances. So I would say that's one way if you have very little experience and maybe while you're in college, you want to have a side job and you have the opportunity. There's also the world where, you can get an internship in more of the business roles, like what I do. There's also companies that offer internships in terms of the production team. So keep an eye out for internships. And then I would say that the QA process is another good route.
Really good. What would you say to that, Ryan? Well,
one thing I'd add to that is don't think that you have to wait to start making video games when you get a job in video games.
Good advice.
I started doing it professionally at 15, but I started making games when I was about 8. And they were, little stupid demos that I would do on my own, but you could do it at home. And it's great when we meet somebody who's coming in off the streets, especially somebody who's new, who could come in and show us what they've done on their own. Because you mentioned passion. You have to be very passionate to last in this industry. And if I didn't get paid to make games, I'd still be sitting here making games. So it's important. Download the stuff, even if it's small, ridiculous little demos that you're making. Just make stuff. And eventually it'll happen. Eventually, if you can come in and show me something you did on your own time, that sets you so far above almost everybody else that I see.
Wow. Really good advice here. I do want to come back to one thing that I asked Paul. He said QA, and I wasn't quite sure what that meant. So I asked him what it meant, and he explained it to me. There are lots of terminology in this industry and others that we may not know. So it's okay to ask, Paul or Ryan, if you had somebody shadowing you, interning under you, what do you think if the student or the young person had questions? Hey, what does that mean? Can you show me this? Explain this. What would you say to that? Ryan, is that okay for a young person to be curious and ask those kind of questions?
Oh, no, you have to. I mean, there's so, even now, even with the industry as mature as it is, you can't really read a book and figure out all this stuff. You learn by asking questions. So there's a lot of knowledge that we have just from experience that you're never going to find online, or you're never going to find it anywhere. So ask, always ask. And to your point, you could find us on LinkedIn. You can, I've written articles that are out there. I have a podcast that's out there. Go do your research, ask the questions. I didn't get here alone. A lot of people helped me. So we're always trying to help other people.
That's awesome. I'm going to take a quick pause from our questions. I want to do a little communications exercise with the students. So Ryan and Paul, hang out. Okay. Don't leave us, but I want to share my screen. And I think the teachers will appreciate what we're about to do. Let me get my chat going. Okay. Can everybody see my Word document? Yes. Okay. So for the teachers here, we already talked at the beginning, students, to common a habit today to not capitalize our I's. So I want the students to look at this email asking about shadowing at a company. And I want the students, if you're at a computer, please, to the line that I'm highlighting, I want you to rewrite this line with proper capitalization. Can you do that for me in the chat? I want you to show me that you know how to write a proper sentence with Chelsea says, I see no issues with this email. That therein lies the problem, right? So there we go. Atul gave a great example. Austin gave a great example. Excellent. Great work. And many of you might know this is very obvious. Many of us, we have to be reminded that when we're sending a message professionally, we need to use proper grammar. We cannot send messages that look like text messages to everybody because it hurts how they might think of us. So I appreciate everyone writing these messages to go through this little exercise together, because it seems very minor and small, but it actually holds a lot of weight. Now, I don't know for Paul or Ryan, if you got an email from someone with no subject line, all lowercase, like one long paragraph, looking for an opportunity, applying for a job, would you take that person as seriously as someone who put a composed message together? Ryan, I see you making a...
Yeah, I mean, well, to give you a real practical example, I mean, I deal with this all the time. I see probably 30 to 40 resumes every day.
Whoa.
And given all the things that I have to do, I can spend about 10 seconds per resume reading it. That's about the chance that you get. And yeah, if I saw somebody who couldn't communicate clearly, you would be dropped in 5 seconds. You would never have a chance to get your foot in the door. So
you wouldn't even get 10 seconds. You'd only get 5 seconds.
Yeah.
He's telling you he works at Bethesda ZeniMax. He's hiring all the time. He's telling you. So don't listen to me. Don't listen to your teacher. we rattle on. He is telling you. He's telling you. So that's the honest truth. Paul, what would you say to that when you get messages from the outside world?
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. It's really important because we're super busy here, and we want to make sure that we understand what you're saying. So if you're as clear as possible and coherent, then we're able to understand what you're saying. We're able to understand if you're going to be a good match for us, if we're going to fit the needs that you're looking for as a potential career. So it's vital.
Thank you for saying that. I think it's important students hear that they're up against the whole country, the whole world for some of these jobs. And you have to be the best of the best at all phases to be seen, to get that interview. So I appreciate you backing me up on that little exercise. One more thing I want to share, we'll wrap up with some sort of finishing thoughts. I want to return to what I mentioned to instructors at the very beginning. For those who came in and missed this, for the teachers, okay? We put together a Google folder of worksheets and presentations for you. One of them we just did a little bit together of capitalizing I. So some simple, straightforward worksheets that are easy to bring into the middle school classroom, high school classroom, college classroom, wherever you are. So if you want this collection of material, as well as, my computer's lagging a little bit, online presentation checklist to give to students or to keep for yourself to learn how to give effective online presentations. These two items, the worksheets and the presentations and our checklist. If you missed this at the beginning, for the teachers, please go to the chat right now, type the word interested and your email address. Interested and your email address. And what we'd like to do is we have a brief phone call, say hello, learn about your program, pass this along, help you work it in over the course of the semester. So for those who missed it, for the instructors, name, email, or just your email and the word interested, and we will get it to you as soon as possible, okay? And those of you who are gonna watch this on a recording, if you'd like the resources too, email support@rubineducation.com and use the subject line Rubin Worksheets, and we'll get it to you that way if you missed us on the live presentation. And then again, 2 weeks from now, we're gonna do the world of law enforcement on the 22nd, talking to a veteran lieutenant in Coral Gables, Florida, about working in law enforcement. And finally, we will be sending everybody here today a certificate for being here tomorrow morning, Thursday morning. So please look out for that. I want to come back to our guests. We have about 4 or 5 more minutes. And let's start with this. For each of you, if you're going to give sort of your wisdom, your final thoughts to the students about how to get out there and sort of make things happen for yourself, pursue a career in video game development in any type of job you might take on. What would be your thoughts to students about what to do as soon as this webinar ends? We'll start with Paul.
Yeah, I would say, I kind of harped on it earlier, but you don't have to be someone who wants to make the game itself. You can be part of the machine that helps develop the game and helps market the game and helps sell the game and supports the developers if your interests aren't necessarily sitting there and doing the design and the coding specifically. And the thing that I would do is I would go on to maybe a career website for a video game company, look at the types of jobs that they're hiring that might not necessarily be about making video games, but might be in one of those other areas like what I do, or something that you might be interested in, and look at the skills that they're asking for, and then find ways to gain those skills for yourself. Because you can be passionate about video games and not want to make them, but also want to help other people play them, which is very much what I do. So that's definitely a route I would take if that meets your interests.
Okay, thank you for that. Ryan, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think Paul hit on it. Check the websites. We're always advertising, but I think the best advice I have is just do it. Just get out there and do it. If you're a writer, write. Don't wait to get a job in writing. Just write. If you're an artist, make art. If you're a coder, start writing code. You could do all this on your own, and it's fun. If it's not fun, if doing that isn't fun, then right for you. So get out there, do it, have fun, experiment, make mistakes, learn, and you'll fit in fine.
I do. Thank you for that. Okay, this young man has asked this question many times in the chat and in the question, so I'm going to ask it. All right. He said, if there's a video game you want to create, but the characters are owned by another company, you have to ask for permission to use their characters. How does that work? I'll go to Ryan on that. There you go. Jacob Ortiz got the question.
Yeah, I mean, that's called licensing at that point, right? Usually if you wanted to make a Disney game, you have to go to Disney, you pay them money for the rights to use the characters in your game, and you kind of work that out through the business angle. But yeah, that's all licensing. And with something like Disney or Star Wars or Marvel, you're talking millions of dollars at that point.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. That makes sense. And Paul, just with the work that you do, are there any research projects coming up, surveys soon that any of these students can participate in to give you feedback, something that they could actually give you more than just what they said in the chat today?
Potentially. So if you do want to sign up, we have a way for you to sign up to play test. For anyone who's 18, I think our youngest age is 18.
Okay.
So anyone who is an adult, you can go to our Bethesda.net website, go down to the footer, and there's a little sign up for play tests, where you can click the link and then fill out your information. And every now and then we do send out links to those people who qualify and allow them to participate and play games early. You'll have to sign an NDA, obviously.
And what is an NDA?
Yeah, that's a great question. So an NDA is a non-disclosure agreement. So what we're going to do is we're going to send you potentially some game to play before we release it to the public. And so we want to make sure that you're going to be, keep everything that you do confidential. You're not going to tell people about the game. So the non-disclosure agreement, the NDA, is an agreement between us and you, so that you will protect what we share with you, and so that we'll protect the information that you give us as well.
So it's down somewhere way down in the website. Somewhere.
Yeah, go all the way to the bottom.
There it is. Okay, everybody see that? There you go. He just told you a way to be able to potentially help test out some games for them. I mean, how much cooler does it get than that? And while I'm here, I want to mention this is Ryan's podcast, d3podcast.com. Okay, I want to get that shout out in there for you, because really what he's doing is breaking down the world of gaming. So it's way more than what we could cover today. So you're encouraged to go listen to this when you'd like and check out the playtest opportunity. So a lot of good follow-ups here from both of our guests to continue to stay engaged here and continue to learn and participate even in the making of new games. So I want to thank our guests today for being here. Can we have a show of hands, students? Can you do a raise hand as our virtual, clapping to thank them for their time, for what they've shared with us? Really good advice, not just about how to approach the industry, but also some tools to use right now to start getting better. So very practical, actionable stuff. I'm thankful they were here. I hope you're thankful too. And I hope that we'll see all of you in 2 weeks for our World of Law Enforcement webinar. And for the teachers who requested information, we'll be in touch in next day or so to set up a quick phone call to pass along our material. Thank you to Amber Caldwell for her sign language interpretation. Hope you all have a great rest of your week and that we see you in 2 weeks' time. Have a great rest of the day.